Welcome back. We're happy to be with you today, or whatever day you're watching this, to talk and continue our reflections. We're continuing with the 14th Sunday in Ordinary Time. It's amazingly hot out, so I'm not wearing my jacket. I've been told I'm blending in with the background, so all more reason that we need to get painting on this thing one day. So anyway, we hope hopefully it'll cool down a little bit, and take good care of yourselves. Be careful out there in the heat. So Teresa's going to read the gospel from Mark's Gospel for the 14th Sunday in Ordinary Time.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Mark. Jesus departed from there and came to his native place, accompanied by his disciples. When the Sabbath came, he began to teach in the synagogue, and many who heard him were astonished. They said, "Where did this man get all this? What kind of wisdom has been given him? What mighty deeds are wrought by his hands? Is he not the carpenter, the son of Mary, and the brother of James and Joses and Judas and Simon? And are not his sisters here with us?" And they took offense at him. Jesus said to them, "A prophet is not without honor except in his native place and among his own kin and in his own house." So he was not able to perform any mighty deed there, apart from curing a few sick people by laying his hands on them. He was amazed at their lack of faith. The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ. So in this reading, you have this amazing problem because we hear in the Gospel and witness in the Gospel to some degree the signs and wonders that Jesus performs. And the signs are really, it's a great word for it, a sign or a symbol of who he is. A sign stands for something else. So the miracles in the Gospel are often referred to as signs. And it's a way of saying this signifies something else. It signifies that God has come into the earthly life, that heaven and earth have met. The authority of God, is now here. You can see it. And often you hear that question: by whose authority does he do these things? And we think of these signs and wonders with great wonder ourselves. And here he goes to his native place, and we're probably thinking that, well, okay, everything's going to be fine, because this is going to be, he's going to continue on. What can't Jesus do? And then when you hit the end of this reading, it's a little sad because all of these amazing things were kind of met by his own people who've known him his whole life with kind of, with no sense of wonder, with no sense of appreciation that God has done great things, that heaven and earth have come together. Even Jesus Christ couldn't play to that crowd, so to speak, except for a few people that he did help. The environment was wrong. There is a stark reality here. And we know this from our own experience. We know it from our experience as pastors and as parents, and we know that from experience all the time, that if you go into a room where the people in the room are just not, when they're there to hate, their minds are not going to be changed to love. When they do not want to understand, they're going to leave with misunderstandings. It's something about the crowd in front of us, or the people in our lives they're just in that place, and there is nothing you can do to change it. It happens all the time. It's a tremendous part of human nature. And if you are bent on slamming the door in the face of someone who does even great things elsewhere, you will slam the door even in the face of Jesus Christ. It's a hard thing for me to say, because it's awful. We would say, I would never do that, and yet we do it. We do it. We come to class with our mind already made up, and no matter what the teacher says, he or she cannot convince us otherwise. It's actually someone wrote a book, and if I find this book, because I heard about it on the radio one time, and then I went looking for it, And I couldn't find the book, so I may have just dreamed this at one time. But there's a fallacy in philosophy called the Sharpshooter Fallacy, and it's an interesting thing. And it's about, have I already explained this on here? I don't think so. So the Sharpshooter Fallacy is this idea of, there was a guy in Texas, let's say, who on his barn had a bullseye, and people used to come by and they used to look at it and they say, "Wow, that guy's a good shot. That guy's a good shot. That guy's a good shot." And this legend grew about how he was an amazing shot with a rifle. And then, of course, the punchline of this joke is that they find out eventually that he shot at the barn first, and then he put the bullseye on after. Thus giving himself the illusion, and everybody else for that matter, that he was an expert, that he was a great shot with a rifle. We do the same thing. We have our mind already made up. You see this all the time in classrooms, in colleges especially, where you get these very bright young people who come in and then you present something in a different way than they're used to, and they reject it entirely. They say, no, I have to bracket that. You don't know what you're talking about. You're this, you support this person. You're out. I'm not going to learn anything from you. And living your life like that is very sad. And we go through it. Some of us have gone through this in our own lives, but it's a very sad way of living. First thing is, it gives us a great illusion, and it's an illusion of mastery. Because if I keep my world this small, that is very easy to conquer. But if my world is big and open, and I realize the lack of knowledge I have about the world, and I'm a constant learner, I can never conquer that world. And it's complicated also by the fact that Google, as soon as you make two searches on Google, it starts really determining what you're interested in. It knows what you've clicked on. It knows what you like. It does not send you to a website that's going to challenge you. You will start to think, oh, every time I put it into Google, everybody's thinking. How many people have thought that? You start typing it in and you're like, oh yeah, everybody else asked this question. Well, it knows what you're going to ask. It knows better than you do what you're going to ask. Or as well as you do, perhaps, that it was you're going to ask. So it's really reinforced in our time. Social media, your friends that disagree with you learn really quickly that it's not worth getting into an argument with you when they disagree with you. So they don't challenge you on social media. So we tend to live with that, and it's compounded by all of these things this year. Jesus in this time, these people had it in their brains. This is a common man. He's a carpenter. The word used for carpenter is actually in Greek tekton, which means craftsman. It's a shipbuilder. Homer uses that word to talk about shipbuilders and artisans and craftsmen, but still common person. And what great can come from that? We tend to think that all of the great things and the great people and the great musicians and the great artists that's all happening somewhere else. I had a high school teacher. He was an English teacher. We won't hold it against Amy, this guy's sin, but he used to say to us, what good are you going to do? You're from Livonia after all, you know. And, okay, well, Livonia is a nice place. It's certainly, it's similar probably in some sense to Nazareth. Everybody knew everything about everybody. And you have this guy who lived there until he was almost 30 and leaves and is a carpenter, and he comes back, and people have heard about, wait, isn't this Mary's son that's doing this, the carpenter? Are you kidding me? And they have it in their brain that anyone who is going to come and join heaven and earth is certainly not from Nazareth, certainly not from Canandaigua, certainly not from Bloomfield or Livonia or anywhere else that you might be from. Even from Baltimore, Amy, you're not from there. So we have that in our brains, that it's elsewhere. The great things in the world are happening elsewhere. We also tend to think that the terrible things are happening elsewhere. That's not a problem here. That couldn't be a problem here. That would never happen here. That kind of stuff. And we're wrong, because we know that where people are alive and draw breath, we're open and subject to the greatness and the horror that we may be or may do to each other, and that's a stark and harsh kind of a thing and a powerful thing to keep in mind. So really, at the essence of this is we do not ever want to be people who slam the door in the face of each other or of Jesus Christ, for that matter, and yet we do it. We choose earth over heaven all the time. We do it all the time. This morning at Mass we were talking about the difference between the law and love, and this was a favorite thing of Sheen, of course, to talk about. And he said, and I mentioned, the law restrains me. It's good, but it kind of, when we live by the law, we're always thinking, what can I get away with? How far can I push it? How far can I go? And when we live by love, it's a constant pouring out of ourselves. And when we live by the law, we say, we know the rules. This shouldn't happen here. This great thing should happen elsewhere. That's a judgment. It's because we're living by the rules only. When you live by the rules only, you become judgmental. You become judgmental because you're saying, I'm using the law to judge good and bad, and that's it. And then Jesus says you're not supposed to judge, and that he himself is the fulfillment of the law, and he poured himself out in love for us. So our love of others fulfills the law because we're not going to harm anybody when we love them. And that's really the thing, is to recognize the potential in any person, no matter where they're from, no matter who they are, no matter what their background is or what they've done in the past. You can imagine in the early church, people knew who Saul was. And then he becomes Paul, and people probably held it against him for a while. And we know this is very likely the case. And that the great love of Jesus Christ that these Christian people were living out said, oh, this is a changed man. Saul has been answered. The evil of Saul has been answered by the love of Jesus Christ in Paul. And that can happen for any of us. It's very challenging. It's very hard. But what we've got to do is to remember that when we look upon any person, and I have to say that again, any person, we have to remember that God's love is in them in the fact that he created them, and that our job and if we live only by these rules that say that kind of a person can never do good or be kind or is not welcome or can't do this or can't participate on this, when we get into that, we are failing. We're slamming the door in the face of Jesus Christ, because he is somebody who recognizes in all the great potential and value that they have. So as Christian people, may we do our best to not do that, to stop doing that, to repent if that is something that we do, to really appreciate that no teaching of the church, no conventional wisdom of a culture can tell me not to love, and can tell me that that person or those people are no good, because God made them and Christ died for them, and he commanded us to love. He goes to his native place and they kick him out. They didn't have the ability. Their minds were made up. They were living by whatever rule that they were living by, that this common man could not be the Son of the living God, could not have his authority, and then the greatness of what he had for all people could not be revealed to them. And it is an extremely sad reading, but it's one that we should pay attention to, lest we become like them. So keep that with you now for a while. The world would be a much better place if we practiced this. If we didn't look at people and judge them harshly, or judge them at all. If we looked at people and saw brothers and sisters and sons and daughters and children of God, and recognized the great value that they had, the world would be a very different place, and the United States would be a very, very different place. We wouldn't have the division and the hurt and separation and problems that we have if we really, really prayed over this more often than we do now. So I offer you that this week. Again, stay very safe in the hot weather. Stay cool and take good care of yourselves. And just have a great week until we see you next time.